Welcome to this explainer. We're diving right into the improbable journey of Srila Prabhupada and the ISKCON movement. It's this absolutely astonishing true story of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and the global spiritual awakening he somehow sparked against all conceivable odds. Honestly, it's a narrative that reads almost like an ancient myth, yet it happened right in the middle of the 20th century. We're going to explore the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, you probably know them as the Hare Krishna movement, and trace exactly how he built this massive international phenomenon from nothing.
All right, think about the number 69 for a second. 69. That was his exact age when he set off on this wild, practically impossible mission. Just think about that. We're talking about an age when most people are, comfortably settled into retirement, looking for a quiet life. But instead, Prabhupada was just starting what would become the most arduous and physically demanding chapter of his entire life.
And get this, he wasn't backed by some massive corporate endowment or anything like that. He arrived in America with exactly 40 rupees. That translated to roughly $7 at the time. Armed with literally just a few bucks, absolutely zero contacts in a completely foreign land, and a couple trunks of translated Vedic literature, he set out with the unfathomable goal of raising the consciousness of the entire world.
Section 1. A life-changing encounter, the 40-year preparation. Let's look at the actual spark that ignited this whole mission.
1922, he meets his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. 1944, he starts the Back to Godhead magazine. 1959, he takes sannyasa, which is the renounced order of life. And finally, in 1965, he leaves for America. This progression perfectly illustrates his incredible patience. We're looking at a solid 40-plus years of intense preparation between his initial call to adventure and actually crossing the threshold. He even single-handedly started that magazine during the middle of the Second World War.
The catalyst for all of this was a conversation way back in 1922. During India's fierce struggle for independence, a young Abbe, which was his given name, was naturally drawn to Gandhi's political movement. But his guru gave him this profound instruction. You both are young, educated, so why don't you preach the message of Lord Chaitanya all over the world? He basically argued that spiritual consciousness was a far bigger emergency that transcended any shifting political situations. And that instruction, it was planted so deeply in his heart that he literally never forgot it.
Section 2. The impossible ocean voyage. Crossing the threshold. Getting to the West meant surviving what is essentially a mythological hero's journey.
Secures free passage on the cargo ship MV Jaladuta, endures severe seasickness and 2 heart attacks, experiences a mystical vision of Krishna, and arrives safely after 38 days at sea. So yeah, this was definitely not some luxury cruise. Having no funds, he managed to hitch a ride on an Indian cargo ship. He endured immense physical suffering, surviving 2 actual heart attacks while crossing the ocean. It was only after a mystical vision of Krishna assuring him of protection that the waters calmed, and he finally made it to New York City.
Section 3. Matchless Gifts in New York. The movement begins. Let's see how his early trials in a bitter New York winter really laid the foundation for something massive.
Summer 1966, ISKCON is officially founded at a humble storefront named Matchless Gifts at 26 2nd Avenue, NYC. He bravely rented this tiny Lower East Side spot. It was a former curio shop, and they didn't even change the sign, so it still said Matchless Gifts. Right there, he formally founded the International Society for Christian Consciousness. He took this tiny, humble shop and turned it into the headquarters for an international spiritual revolution, spreading bhakti yoga, the path of loving devotion, right to the youth of New York.
Section 4. Translating Timeless Vedic Wisdom. The Core Teachings. So, what exactly was he teaching at this tiny storefront that resonated so deeply in 1960s America?
The Vedic Varna system maps out his vision for society. You have the Brahmana for intellectuals and spiritual leaders, Kshatriya for administrators, Vaishya for merchants, and Shudra for workers. But the absolute key here is the determined by column. Based on his translation of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, he explained that an ideal human society should be divided by natural qualities, called guna, and work, not birth. He explicitly rejected the rigid, oppressive caste system of birth lineage, teaching that anyone from any background could become a spiritual leader based entirely on their character.
4 principles of a sattvic life. No meat eating, meaning a strict lacto-vegetarian diet. No intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. You see, he didn't just teach high-level philosophy, he demanded practical application. He instructed his followers to adopt this clean, sattvic lifestyle of purity and goodness, emphasizing compassion, health, and moral integrity. Now, while that might sound incredibly restrictive to some today, it was actually a radical, stabilizing shift for the counterculture youth of the 60s. It gave them immense structure and a crystal-clear moral compass.
Section 5. Challenging Modern Materialistic Science, the Debates. Armed with this ancient wisdom, he boldly challenged the biggest prevailing scientific theories of the 20th century.
Life comes from life was Prabhupada's sharp critique of materialistic science. He directly questioned the modern assumption that biological life originated merely from random chemical combinations in some primordial soup. He challenged scientists by asking, well, if life comes from chemicals, why can't you just create life in a laboratory right now? This debate matters because it forces a conversation about what consciousness actually is, pushing well beyond just a purely mechanical view of existence.
So the modern scientific view says life originates from matter and chemical evolution versus Prabhupada's Vedic view, which states life originates from life or consciousness and the individual's soul never dies. We're impartially mapping these out to show where the friction really was. On one side, materialistic evolution. On the other, Prabhupada arguing that a conscious creator is absolutely necessary and that the individual's soul is eternal, just changing bodies like we change our clothes.
The frog is always thinking in terms relative to his, our faculties, our experience, and our powers of speculation are always limited. I absolutely love this. It's his famous Dr. Frog analogy. He frequently used this to point out how a frog living its entire life at the bottom of a well cannot possibly comprehend the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean, no matter how hard it speculates. He playfully used this to argue that relying solely on our limited human senses to understand the deep origins of the universe is inherently flawed.
Section 6. An enduring global legacy, the movement today. Let's step back and look at how the actions of this one elderly man rippled across the entire globe.
Over 600 ISKCON temples established worldwide. Circumnavigated the globe 14 times to preach. Survived the 2011 Russian legal trial seeking to ban his Gita. And fast forward to 2025, Indian PM Modi formally presents a Russian copy of his Gita to President Putin. The historical milestones here are just staggering. From fighting off a high-profile legal trial where a group literally tried to ban his translation, a case the judge completely dismissed, by the way, to top world leaders exchanging his books. The historical impact is undeniable.
89. That is the astonishing number of different languages his translated Vedic literatures are now available in. He would sit up translating ancient Sanskrit texts late into the night, every single night. It's a true testament to his relentless, lifelong work ethic that millions of these books have been distributed all over the planet.
Could a 69-year-old with just $7 and an unshakable conviction really elevate the consciousness of the entire world? I want to leave you with this final thought. How often do we totally underestimate what sheer, absolute dedication can achieve, regardless of age, wealth, or resources? Prabhupada's improbable journey proves that sometimes the most massive global transformations begin with a single step taken against all conceivable odds. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks your curiosity to dive in and learn even more.